Welcome to Zeitgeist Radio. I'm your host, Morgan Rowe, founder of the Zeitgeist Academy. Zeitgeist means spirit of the times, and it is the collection of cultural forces that all contribute to what it feels like to be alive and part of a dynamic culture. Every episode, I speak with someone from a unique musical subculture. We dig into their passion and explore how music is a powerful force that brings people together. Before we dive into today's interview, I want to offer you something special. If you're like me, you come out of these interviews with all sorts of questions. Each week, after speaking with one of our amazing guests, I dive into something they introduced us to that I find interesting or important. I write a blog post about it and email a nice tidy bundle to your inbox every 2 weeks. Never miss an exploration of an awesome musical subculture. Join the Academy and sign up for my free newsletter at zeitgeistacademy.com/radio. My guest today is Beth Cook, a Muppet enthusiast and founder of OurMuppetMelody.com. Beth, welcome to Zeitgeist Radio.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm excited to be here.
I'm so excited. So Beth has been a voice student of mine for over a year, which is crazy. It's been super fun. So can you tell people kind of who you are musically?
Musically, I'm just a fan and amateur singer who's doing it just for the heck of it.
And for the Muppets.
And for the Muppets. Yeah, it should be noted that every single song that I have practiced with you has been a Muppet song.
Yes. This is definitely the most interesting introduction I ever received for a new student. Is our mutual friend was like, I have a friend, Beth, and she wants to sing the Muppets. I was like, what? Did I hear that right? Like, just the Muppets? And at first, honestly, my thought was, well, we'll run out of content fast. And then now that I've been like, we've been taking lessons for over a year, I'm like, oh no, we're not going to run out of content anytime soon. So I'm really excited to have you on and pick your brain about kind of where this whole journey started. And you have a blog, and I'd love to get into some of this a little bit more and talk about some of the songs we've done maybe.
Yeah.
So can you kind of start okay, so I'm assuming you got into the Muppets as a kid, but what about the Muppets kept your fancy all these years to the point where you have, you're here now as you are with it?
Yeah. I think, it was one of those things that was always just kind of playing as a kid. It was, both of my parents were fans, which is rare. They didn't have a lot in common, but that was one of the things they had in common. And so, the three of us kids just grew up watching the Muppets, as many people of our generations did. And I think the more that I allowed myself to dig into that interest, the more I found there was there to discover. The thing that has always appealed to me ever since I was a kid was just the absurdity.
Yeah.
And absurdity and fun for its own sake.
Yeah.
It's just because, fun is a necessary part of being alive. But then also that's just what gets you in the door. Like, they reel you in with the fun, but then they hit you with like the big universal themes of kindness and curiosity and how all living things are connected to each other. And
some of the songs we've done have been like intense.
Mm-hmm.
Intense. Some of they don't shy away from some serious subject matter.
Oh, yes. There are songs about, grief and feeling lost and alone in the world. And
one in particular that we did, it just happens that actually, I think we've been doing lessons for, it's been it must be closer to a year and a half, because I'd already been doing lessons with you for a while, and I had a very unfortunate thing happen where I lost a very dear friend of mine, and I actually had to stop one of the songs we were doing because it was so intense. We didn't stop it, right? But I think I shared with you okay, I can't teach this song today. We'll come back around, because it was about a friend. It was about the loss of a friend. Maybe they didn't mean death loss, but it was certainly it was very intense. And I honestly, I know the Muppets. I've watched the Muppets a little bit, but like I'm surprised. I'm like taking this whole journey with you.
Hmm.
The teacher becomes the student of like the depth. I've been so impressed with the depth of some of these songs. They're really well done. They're well written, and they don't shy away from stuff.
Yeah, I think it was when I was in high school, this big, beautiful, full color coffee table book called Jim Henson The Works was released. And around that time, I had to do a high school paper on someone you admire. And I was like, oh, look at that. And so I think that was my gateway into a deeper level of Muppet nerdery.
Yes, I love it.
Yeah. And then I eventually got connected with the folks over at toughpigs.com. Was just following them for several years. And then I finally got brave enough to say, like, hey, I write a Muppets blog and I like what you guys do. Could I maybe write for you guys sometimes? And I've been working with them for the past year and change. And it's been absolutely fantastic to find, the people who are interested in the same thing as you, but to the same level of, like, super nerddom.
I love it. So let's go back a couple steps. So what made you want to start? How long have you had your own blog?
Oh gosh, that would have been 2013, 14, 15. I know I was still at Evergreen, that era of my life.
So right around
Um,
10 years.
oh my gosh.
2013.
Oh, I don't even wanna
Oh
think
boy.
about 2013
I
to be
broke
10
Beth.
years
I'm
ago.
sorry.
But yeah, I'd been wanting to find the lyrics online of one of my favorite lesser known Henson projects, which was The Tale of the Bunny Picnic. And one song in particular, the opening song, they've got two groups of bunnies singing different things over each other at the same time. I'm like, I can't understand what they're saying. And I looked online and I could not find the lyrics anywhere. And I was like, well, it's 20 whatever. If it doesn't exist online, it probably doesn't exist at all. Oh man, I'm going to have to do it myself, aren't I? So I created a blog. It's called at first for a long time it was just Our Melody. Then I grabbed the URL
Nice.
ourmuppetmelody.com. So I wanted to not just transcribe the lyrics for, the lesser known projects so that, if there is someone else out there in the world who's wondering the same thing that I am, that, hey, here you go. Here's the lyrics to The Tale of the Bunny Picnic. But also I realized, I have a lot to say about these songs and, I wanted to give credit to the lyricists and the musicians who write these songs and talk about what these songs mean to me.
Yeah, and that we've done that bunny picnic song, right?
We've done the ending song, which it sounds absurd to say to the world that my favorite protest song is sung by a bunch of Muppet
It's
bunnies.
so true. And that, you that's how you phrased it to me. You're like, this is
Mhm.
my favorite protest song. And I was like, what? And then I'm like, oh my God, this is a protest song.
That one is called Drum of Time. But
Yeah.
yeah, the one that I still haven't been able to finish the lyrics for because like when I posted it, I was like, okay, here's my best guess. And, if anyone's reading this, chime in with your best guess and maybe we can piece this together. And I have definitely gotten those comments that have been super helpful.
Nice.
But that one particular song, it's called Hello Sunshine. Like the slower verse is easy to figure out, but the faster verse, I just cannot fit all the pieces together because I don't know, maybe someone who worked on the project has gotten it written down somewhere.
Right, right. Have you ever reached out to anybody?
I didn't at first because I had no connections, and now that I'm really kind of one of the newbies over at Tough Pigs, but they've got connections. So maybe someday I'll reach out to someone who is
Someday
connected on
you'll
that
finish.
project.
10 years later, you'll finish the lyrics.
Exactly.
Oh, that's so great.
But
Yeah.
yeah,
Before we move on, do you want to tell people why that's a protest song?
oh man.
I don't want to leave
So
them hanging, you know?
honestly, The Tale of the Bunny Picnic, it sounds so vapid, but it's an incredibly meaningful piece that really is all about like the cycle of the abuse of power. Like, you've got this community of bunnies who are just trying to live their lives and the youngest sibling, Bean. This is the origin story of Bean Bunny. If you've ever seen him hanging out with the other Muppets, this is where he came from. He's being teased by his older brother. But then all of the buddies are getting harassed by this dog that's working on the farm, and it turns out the farmer is being absolutely terrible to this dog, and he's telling him, "Get rid of these buddies or I'm not gonna feed you. If you do a good job, I might even give you a name."
Oh my gosh.
Yeah, that level of messed up. And, the buddies concoct this plan to deal with the dog, but then they find out, oh, the dog is just the middleman. He's terrified of this much bigger, badder guy. And then they finally, it starts out with just the one, with just Bean, the smallest and the one who everyone underestimated, standing up all by himself and singing.
I got chills. Like when I first watched it, I got chills.
Yeah.
I know.
And then slowly the other buddies come and join. And because the farmer is allergic to bunnies, which is why he wanted to get rid of them in the first place, they cause a sneezing storm and his pants fall down. And it's a very Muppety ending. But, it's a really powerful message.
Yeah, one tiny little bunny, one tiny little person singing in song can raise so many voices. Yeah, again, it's just been so fun. Okay, so what were the songs that led you to, or what was your process when you were like, I want to take actual lessons? Like, it's one thing to have a
Mhm.
hobby and like, well, I mean, you're pretty serious about it, but like actually studying with someone, what led to that decision?
Yeah, singing was always something that I'd been vaguely interested in. Like when I was a kid and, you're wondering what you want to be when you grow up, like a singer was always one of those things that I threw in as a possibility, but it was always one of many, like a singer or an actor or a writer or a marine biologist or, you know,
Right. Yeah.
and I loved fifth grade choir and I was a little hoity-toity about having this huge range and being able to go up really high. And then didn't really have I didn't really have a structured time and place for singing until fast forward to high school and we're doing a musical and I discover, "Oh, I've completely lost all of that range that I had," and having trouble, like, even auditorily distinguishing between notes. And I didn't realize that it was something that, use it or lose it kinda thing. But, that was high school. That was
Well,
I wanna
yeah,
say how long
puberty
ago.
sucks just generally, and it's
Right.
things are growing and changing very quickly in your head. I mean, we've talked about how small all of these muscles are, right?
Mhm.
And man, just be glad that you didn't have to go through what guys do with the voice drop. That's a whole nother
Oh,
level
geez,
of
yeah.
like talk about not knowing, being able to control what comes out of your mouth, being able to hear or associate. Like, yeah,
Yeah.
growing up is a crazy process.
So I
Yeah.
think as my Muppet nerdery was growing, I found myself singing these songs, and for the most part, it didn't matter if I was pitchy or whatever because I was the only one there and I didn't really care. But if it was a song that was particularly important to me, then it felt more important to get it right. And there was a particularly difficult time in my life in the summer of 2021 when my cat got out. She was an indoors only cat and she got outside and it was the first day of this massive heat wave when it was, 114 degrees outside.
No.
And I spent a week sleeping in the backyard. I just became nocturnal. I would lie awake for an hour and then go walk around the neighborhood calling for her and then repeat all night long. And then during the day, I would try and catch some snatches of sleep inside where the AC was. And I just found myself singing these songs that were so familiar to me and therefore comforting,
Yeah.
but also these songs that are about, like, 2 in particular. There was, One Little Star from Follow That Bird and Moon Moon from Big Bird in Japan. Uh, and they're both about, looking up to the night sky and feeling helpless and lost and looking for answers. And it was that period of my life that made me really want to, learn how I could connect with these songs on another level. And I really did want it to be just for me. I was like, I had no aspirations of like singing in front of other people.
Yeah.
And the longer I've gone with taking lessons, the more I've been just singing around the house for the heck of it. I mean, granted, living alone helps with that, but
And we've done both those songs. Did we do?
Mhm.
Yeah, we've done both those songs. Yeah. How many Muppet songs are there that you know of? Do you have a number in your head?
I couldn't possibly put a number on that. So first we have to define, what do we mean by a Muppet song?
Okay, no, that's
'Cause-
actually true. Let's talk about this. Yes.
So are we including songs that any Henson associated production has sung, whether or not it was written for something else or originated elsewhere? Or are we just including original songs that were written specifically for that production? Are we only including the core Muppets, or are we adding on things like, Sesame Street and Labyrinth and everything else?
Yeah, yeah. What do you wrap in typically?
It's great. I actually had a friend come to me with this question of like, what counts as a Muppet? And I was like, aha, you stumbled on the age-old taxonomy of Muppets problem. I would say for our purposes at Tough Pigs, it helps to really include anything under the umbrella term of Muppets that could be associated with the Jim Henson Company or Sesame Street, which Jim Henson was involved with when he was alive, but is not owned by the Jim Henson Company. And nowadays it's, Disney owns like the core cast of Muppets, but not other properties. And yeah, so I'm using the term Muppets as a broad umbrella term.
Yeah, we've done a lot from Fraggle Rock.
Oh, yes.
Yeah.
That is
Yeah.
my very favorite, as will not surprise you.
What about it makes it your favorite?
Oh, gosh. I think because it does have that combination of absurdity and meaning in perfect balance. And especially because these are creatures that we don't see in the usual world. Like they're not, birds or pigs or frogs or even monsters. They're their own unique thing in their own unique world. And that really appealed to the weirdo in me. Um, it was something that I remembered from my childhood, but kind of vaguely. And then, would find like a VHS in high school and watch it and go, oh my gosh, I remember this. And all these memories would come flooding back. And now, of course, it's just, become my hyper focus special interest. Yeah, that's become my kind of go-to thing at Tough Pigs is I'm the Fraggle nerd. And, I approached Tough Pigs about doing a Fraggle Rock podcast. And then while we were working on it, the reboot of Fraggle Rock premiered, and Henson approached us like, hey, do you want to do a podcast to promote Back to the Rock? And we went, yeah.
Yeah. That's awesome.
And Joe, thank goodness, Joe Heddes, one of the main guys over at Tough Pigs, was like, yes, but I have to bring on this gal who you've never heard of, but I promise she knows her stuff. And so at the end of each episode, there's a little 5-minute bit where I'm interviewing Hallie Stanford, who is one of the show's executive producers and the president of television at the Jim Henson Company. I'm like, I got to say that I did that. It was so incredible. And so that was Fraggle Talk. And now we're premiering Fraggle Talk Classic.
Okay.
Where my co-hosts and I, go through one episode at a time of the original series.
Oh, that is so cool.
I love hearing that from people. Every once in a while I'll see something nasty on Twitter about like, oh my God, it's so embarrassing of, when people are liking things that are meant for children, and fortunately, the rest of the Muppet fandom gives that no
Yeah,
quarter.
no tolerance for that. Oh, that's so cool. Man, so what are some other what are some other big names? We sort of talked about how a lot of these songs have really incredible guests or the people who have written them. Um there's a lot going on. So
Yeah.
I don't know, are there other people that you want to like mention or who are notable that
So
I may not know about?
I would say the big 2 for the Sesame Street songs are, Joe Raposo and Jeff Moss. And, like, these are names that, Muppet nerds will know, but, if, you just watch Sesame Street as a kid or, these aren't necessarily household names for
Right,
everybody.
yeah.
So Joe Raposo is best known for Being Green,
Yeah, okay.
but then also, he wrote the Sesame Street theme, C is for Cookie, One of These Things Is Not Like the Other. Of the songs that we've worked on, he wrote Little Things and A New Way to Walk.
So fun. So
Oh, I
fun.
love that one so much. And
That's an example of a celebrity. Um,
yeah. So the original was was sung by 3 pig Muppets and called the Oinker Sisters. It was very much a disco style,
yeah,
and so they were, uh, Sesame Street is known for its parody song, so of course it was the Pointer
of
Sisters.
course.
But when they, redid it for, oh god, it would have been the early 2000s, they had Destiny's Child come and sing it with a few of the Muppets, and that's the version that we practiced together, and it was very intimidating for me to sing along with Beyoncé, but, it ends up being this one that I feel comfortable singing along to now because I just love that version so much.
It's so good. Yes. That's funny because what did you say his name was that wrote all those?
That was Joe Raposo.
Joe Raposo. It's funny, like those are big hits. Like
Oh, yeah.
everybody knows C is for Cookie. Everybody knows Being Green. So it's interesting that we are not as familiar with his name because I would say that
Mhm.
honestly, probably more people know those songs than like some major hits by superstars, like
Oh, yeah.
songs by major like celebrities, you know. It's just funny
Mhm.
because the reach, because you get the kids, but then you don't associate that name to it. So it's like this weird superstardom without the fame.
Yep.
Where everyone knows your work, but no one knows who you are. Well, people know who you are, but not at the same level.
Yeah.
Oh,
So
crazy.
the other big, Sesame Street guy was Jeff Moss, who wrote, The People in Your Neighborhood and Rubber Ducky and I Love Trash. But the one that you and I have worked on is I Don't Wanna Live on the Moon.
I love that song.
It's so
I love that
great.
song. I actually that so here's the thing. Every time we have a lesson, those songs are earworms and they are stuck in my head
Oh, yeah.
for days. But yeah, I would like to live on the moon. That is a beautiful, beautiful song. That was one of my favorites personally that you've brought. Just such a lovely look at the joys of going out somewhere and exploring just to explore, but then you come back to the home that you love and the people who are around you. But it's nice to go other places too. Like it's so delightful.
Exactly. Yeah. And so another big name, of course, is Paul Williams, who, non-Muppet fans would recognize a lot of his work. But, he was also the guy behind the songs of The Muppet Movie and Muppet Christmas Carol and so many others. And yeah, just a perfect example of like someone who you wouldn't necessarily knew wrote those songs if you
Yeah.
only knew him from his non-Muppet works,
Yeah. Yeah.
right? He's one of those guys where
Tiptoe
as
through
soon
the
as you look him up,
tulips.
yeah, 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 you look him up and you're like, oh yeah, that guy.
Oh yeah. Lots of old school country folk. Rainbow Connection. Was Rainbow Connection for the Muppets, or was that for...
Yeah, it was in the
Really?
Muppet movie. It's
And
the
then it
first
was
song in the Muppet
covered
movie,
by-
and yeah.
Oh, man. I love
And
it.
I will say that I've deliberately avoided working on that one because
Oh, for sure.
we like to roll our eyes over at Tough Pigs that it's overused.
I
And, like,
completely, I would, yeah, that's how I feel about, like, for Elise, da 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 da,
Yep.
as a piano teacher. Every single kid wants to learn that song, and I'm just like, no, I will not. I have to draw the line somewhere. And then that, doot, yeah, there's some that I get it, they're overdone. Yeah, this was interesting looking at that list. Um, Man, so is it okay with you if I just bring out some that I have questions about and then just kind of ping some thoughts? Or do you have a couple other people you want to highlight first?
yeah, before we change gears, I will
Yeah.
say that my very favorites are the duo of Philip Balsam, composer, and Dennis Lee, lyricist, who wrote all of the songs for Fraggle Rock
Wow. That's so
and
many.
The Tale of the Buddy Picnic, which is why they sound so great together and fit so well. But yeah, that particular combo of these two guys there's just something magic there, and I think that's probably a big part of why Fraggle Rock is my favorite.
Sure. What is it do you think that you love about them?
Oh gosh. Well, we recently lost Philip Balsam, which was really hard. I was thinking back about like how much these songs have been present all throughout my life and shaped my childhood and how I understood the world and my relationship to it. And it's so odd to have someone have that much of an effect who you've never met.
Right.
And one of the things that's really impressive is the range. Like in Fraggle Rock alone, they cover every genre of music you could name. You've got country, you've got gospel, you've got rockabilly, you've got, these sweet waltzy lullabies. It's just absolutely everything. And then they, of course, also run the gamut from, absolutely absurd nonsense to these really deep songs about the meaning of life. And
Yes.
but they do it in a way that's so accessible. Like the lyrics hardly ever mention the specifics of what's going on in the episode. They hardly ever mention the word Fraggles. It's just, universal themes.
Well, each song that again, I kind of expected, just because I'm not as familiar, I expected, I guess, more, how do I put it? Like, just more like light, upbeat, fun, entertaining.
Yep.
And I've been like, every single song that you've brought pretty much could be like, it is its own standalone song that like I could just go sing somewhere, like, and it's
Yep.
not necessarily that people would, if they didn't know the song, they would still be able to connect to it, even though they may not have seen the episode or know the context of it. And a lot of these come from episodes I haven't seen, right?
Mhm.
And I'm still able to connect to them and get something out of working on them, which I think is just so fascinating. Again, my respect for this whole thing has just deepened so much working on these with you, because they are just full, complete songs about real things.
Yeah, absolutely.
And then you're right. Okay, so all of those songs that so all the songs from Fraggle Rock were written by the same guys.
Yes.
Because like you just said, like legit, like bluegrass and rock and schmaltz. We were just talking about schmaltz. That is an impressive amount of flexibility to be able to write so well in all of those different genres.
Yeah.
Oh man. Well, they're awesome.
So yeah, I just wanted to give them a shout out before we moved on.
Yeah, for sure.
The mission of the Zeitgeist Academy is simple. I want everyone to live their best musical life. If your dream includes singing with confidence, I got you. I made a mini online course so you can get out of musical drama and finally understand which vocal elements make you sound good. Banish forever those fears of being out of key, off rhythm, and other assorted mayhem. Step into your best musical life, my friends. Sign up for the free course at zeitgeistacademy.com/radio.
Okay, so one of the ones I wanted to ask you about, what is Ain't No Hole in the Wash Tub? That one, I need a little context. I know I just said that they're all kind of like stand on their own, but that
Right.
one, I
So that's another Paul Williams gem. He also wrote the songs for Emmett Otter's Jug Band Christmas, which was a very unique experience because it existed as a book first, and the titles of the songs were all in the book,
cool.
but not the lyrics. They would just mention offhand. And then Paul Williams was faced with this challenge of like, okay, now I've got to write a song that's called The Bathing Suit That Your Grandma Otter Wore. And he did it.
Whoa, okay.
So yeah, Ain't No Hole in the Wash Tub is this absolutely, toe tapping earworm that's all about, struggling with poverty, but finding joy wherever you can. That, hey, as long as there's no hole in the wash tub, you're going to be fine.
You'll get clean. Yeah, well, boy, part of the reason I had to ask was that was probably the worst earworm out of all of them.
Absolutely.
It wouldn't go away. And even like weeks after we stopped working on it and kind of retired it, we can always come back later to any of these. But man, weeks later, it would still pop in. I'm like, oh my God.
That was the one that I was so proud to break out at karaoke night with my friends.
Oh, yes.
I was like hesitant to do anything. And I was like, well, I've been taking singing lessons, but I've only been practicing Muppet songs. And like, not even the ones that y'all know, like the deep cuts. And because my friends are amazing, they were like, no, now you have to do it. You have to.
Right.
I was like, okay. So I got up there and I sang with the track because here's the thing. Karaoke tracks of deep cut Muppet songs do not exist.
Yeah. No, I fully believe that.
Yeah. And we'd been working on it enough that I nailed it. And they were just like, holy cow.
Oh, that makes me so happy.
It made me so happy too.
Yeah, everybody go listen to it because that's not an easy feat, actually. That is an intense song. There's a lot to that song. Oh, awesome. So another one, we kind of talked about New Way to Walk. I just want to mention that one. But I'm going to go back there someday. That one is lovely. Can you, what is that? What's going on there?
So the original, this is another Paul Williams because it's from the Muppet movie. And in this moment, we see Gonzo singing this song just up to the night sky and musing about his place in the universe. And it's at this moment where, the bus is broken down and they're not going to make it to Hollywood in time and everyone's feeling depressed. And Kermit especially has this monologue where with himself, I guess it's a dialogue where he's talking to another Kermit. And it fits really well in the story of this poignant moment of, figuring out your place in the universe, but also even just taken out of the movie, it works totally well as a standalone song. Years ago, it was the song that I sang when the 1 year that I went to Burning Man and I sat at the temple and listened to all these people telling their stories of grief and anger and confusion. And, every once in a while someone would, lead us in a joint prayer or they would sing a song and so when it was my turn, I said that, I'd come here to grieve for my sister's stillborn baby, my niece that I never got to meet. And I found so much healing in sitting with these total strangers and hearing their stories and sharing that grief together that I sang that song in all my pitchiness and, passed the it wasn't a speaking stick. It was a little Nerf football to the next person, and wrote my niece's name on the temple. And man,
Oh, that's beautiful. Wow. Yeah. Well, man, what stood out to me with that song was some of the covers that you brought, because it
yeah,
has been covered. And there was one in particular that we kind of based because the range was a little hard.
yeah. The
So
Gonzo version, it was not achievable for me at that time.
it
So
was
we
very
went
low.
with the version by I believe the artist's name is Rachel Yamagata, but it's on the Green album, which is all Muppet covers.
So beautiful.
Yeah.
Like that cover specifically really stood out to me. It's just very like, I don't know, very earthy and gritty, and it was just so, that was a really special one as well. I had no idea this whole backstory for you as well, but you're right that even without the context of the Muppets, it's just a really beautiful, sweet song.
Yeah.
Yeah. I believe the very first song we ever worked on.
Oh gosh, what was it?
I'm pulling.
Oh,
Was it
I
Where the
remember.
River Meets the Sea?
It was one. That was one of the first ones.
Yeah.
The first one we ever worked on was "There's a Promise."
There's a Promise. I have those two at the same, like on the same, like right next to each other. So I knew it was one. Yes. There's a Promise. So why was that your first song?
Oh, that's a really good question, because it was not Christmas time at all, and like that was from not the Christmas episode of Fraggle Rock, but the winter solstice episode of Fraggle Rock,
Yeah.
and it's all about this theme of there's a rhythm to life and the natural world and the changing of seasons, and winter can feel really hard, but I promise you that spring is coming.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah. It did feel very New Year's, and maybe it was just the time of year. Um,
yeah, maybe I figured I'd
Singers
have it
start
down by Christmas.
practicing. Yeah, we start practicing. I get pretty sour around Christmas a lot of the times. I have really burnt out on Christmas just because as a
Mm.
musician, people don't understand. A lot of times that starts in September.
Oh, yeah.
Christmas, practicing Christmas, whatever, whether it's, performances, whether it's theater, whether it's putting programs together, it starts way early. So people are like, oh, it's the season of Christmas music, and an extended season for a normal person. This is a rant. I will get off my soapbox shortly. But the extended season of a normal person is maybe 6 weeks, right? It's normally between Thanksgiving and then Christmas, and some crazy people start in, before Thanksgiving. Well, when you've already been doing it since September, I'm just like, ugh.
Yeah, enough
So,
already.
but that said, it does take preparation, and that was a great song to work on, for kind of like for New Year's, like,
Yeah.
yeah, yeah. And then right along with it, Where the River Meets the Sea, John Denver did that, right? That was a cover.
Yes and no. So he didn't write it. It was
Right.
another Paul Williams song. It's
Right.
from Emmett Otter's Jug Band Christmas. But yes, John Denver sang that with the Muppets in, I think it's just called John Denver and the Muppets, A Christmas Together. Or honestly, maybe it was Rocky Mountain Holiday. I don't remember which John Denver and the Muppets special it appeared in. But yeah, they did a beautiful version together. And talk about, heavy hitting grief songs. Like that song is literally all about death.
Yeah.
It's so beautiful.
Wow, I didn't even catch that.
Oh, seriously?
I mean, I don't know, maybe because it was the first ones. I that subtext went completely over my head.
I'll send you the lyrics.
Yeah, evidently. Well, we could revisit it. Wow. Yeah, I'm counting here. So far we've done almost 30 songs.
Oh my gosh. Wow.
Yeah. And I know that you have a huge list of more.
Oh, yeah, it goes on and on. And so I specifically chose the songs that make me feel something.
Yeah.
And it, not all sad stuff. Like I do have it categorized into like melancholy stuff and fun stuff and sweet stuff. And I tried to give it a little bit of balance.
Yeah.
But yeah, I'm remembering especially like um this song we worked on, "I'm Never Alone,"
Yeah.
from Fraggle Rock, where
Yes.
Goober
I
is
also love that one so much.
yes, he's singing about how you don't need anyone but you, and it's this great jazzy little swing number, and I just loved singing that around my empty apartment. I'm living alone for the first time ever and just absolutely loving it.
Yes. You're never alone because you've got you.
Exactly.
That's delightful. Okay. I have a question I'm not allowed to not ask you. Does
Yep.
Ralph's puppeteer actually play the piano live?
He does not. I admit
Okay.
I did not know this. I had to look up the answer.
This was really, really important for me to know, so I sent you this question in advance.
So
Because it
apparently,
bugs me, because it looks like he knows what he's doing, but I'm like, there's no way. I play piano. There's no way. But also, he looks like he knows what he's doing. It's very confusing.
yeah. So the answer is both. Like,
Okay.
yes, he knows what he's doing, and also he's not actually playing the piano. So if they were just puppeteering Rolf, just like talking on the Jimmy Dean show, then the normal way that you do what's called a live hands puppet, which you know any Muppet with articulated hands like Rolf or um, Dr. Teeth or Moki from Fraggle Rock, you've got one puppeteer puppeteering their right hand in the head of the puppet, and then the left hand, and then you've got a different puppeteer doing just the right hand. And so that in and of itself is a
Huh.
completely bonkers skill, and to be able to coordinate between two humans.
Oh my gosh.
But when having Rolf play the piano, they would switch to having, Jim Henson doing like just the head and the voice, and then uh Frank Oz would be doing the
Okay.
hands. And I learned this all on Muppet Wiki this afternoon.
Thank you.
There was a bit by Steve Whitmire, who had taken over the role of Kermit after Jim died, and he was talking about doing the hands for Rolf and how he would study the piece like in real life to make sure that his fingers were going where they should be,
They
even though
really
he was playing
do.
on
Yeah.
a piano that made no sound. Like they
Okay.
could, bang out on those keys all day long, but the keys weren't connected, so they didn't make any sound. But so yes, the fingers would be going in their best attempt at the right places, but the music would be pre-recorded.
I would sit there and be like, okay, like I'd pause it and I'd try to look like, okay, do I see fingers under there? No, it should just sound like clump, clump, clump. And I knew it, like, of course it's dubbed. It's going to be dubbed like over, but, um, they're just always in the right spot. And I'm like, I don't know. That tells me something. Thank you for investigating that.
My pleasure.
Tell me about some projects you have coming up. This podcast sounds really cool. Are there other projects that you're doing?
So this year is the 40th anniversary of Fraggle Rock, and so we've been releasing, one episode at a time reviews on Tough Pigs, and similarly, the podcast is going to be talking about, the original series, one episode at a time. But the podcast takes a much deeper dive and talks about more of the background details, and we go off on amusing tangents. And I had thought, well, what if I put the lyrics on my blog and talk about those songs on my blog at the same time that that's being released? And I realized what a massive amount of work that is
Yeah.
that I'm not being paid for. So I
Yeah.
was like, you know what? I'm gonna be kind to me and not do that right now, especially because I am super grateful for there's an entire channel on YouTube that's just Fraggle Rock songs and lyrics. Like it's each, song individually, and then it's got the lyrics in
Nice.
the description. So I'm very grateful to whoever that person is. And I'm like, you know what? I can come back to these songs on my Muppet blog at a later date. They'll still be there. I'll still have things to say about them. And in the meantime, I'm mostly just focusing on the podcast and, the occasional article for Tough Pigs. And, I'm trying to build a writing career. I'm working on a screenwriting portfolio. I've got my various middle grade novels that are sitting gathering dust. But right now, this is where my heart's work is. I just keep getting idea after idea after idea. And I'm just so grateful to have found an outlet where I can talk about these ideas to people who actually want to listen to me talk about them.
Yes, that's when you know you're in the right place.
Amen.
Yes. Just a note on the lyrics thing. I think it's really funny that some of these just seem to be like lost.
Right?
Like
This
that-
was something that I was speculating about on this podcast, is that back in ye olden days of the internet and GeoCities and Netscape, there was a website that had all of the lyrics to all of the Fraggle Rock songs, just apropos of nothing. And now this YouTube channel exists, and I'm wondering if it's the same person. And I keep meaning to reach out to them and ask, hey,
Yeah.
are you this magical human
Yeah.
from back in the day who has the same weird obsession that I do?
Well, was it on a star? Was it on One Little Star? We've done some where you're like, I think these are the lyrics.
Those are the ones that I had to figure out myself. Because yeah, I'm very grateful when other folks are like, here are the lyrics as best as I can figure them out, and I'll go, cool, here's my attempt at that. And if they line up, great. And if they don't, then, I'll listen back a million times. And sometimes I'm like, oh, they're actually right. It is this instead of that. And sometimes it's like, no, I still think it's this.
Yeah. And that's hard. Sometimes you're like, well, it could be either one. I've
Right.
done that in other areas, but I can usually in stuff that projects I've done, I can usually go and look up the definitive answer, right?
Yeah.
You
For a
think
lot of these, we
something-
don't have the definitive answer.
Yeah, which is
Or
wild.
the answer
'cause-
changes, especially with the example that comes to mind is with Being Green. There are different versions where the lyrics change slightly.
Yeah.
And so, it depends on, which version are you talking about? You talking about, Kermit on Sesame Street, or Kermit on The Muppet Show, or Big Bird at Jim Henson's memorial service, or the cover on the Green Album?
Oh my gosh. What's the Green Album? Sounds interesting.
That was an album of just Muppet covers that came out probably a decade ago. That's where that cover of
Yeah.
Going to Go Back There Someday came from.
Yeah. So is this a compilation, like they put the word out and we're like, reached out to is it celebrities, or is who are these people on this album?
Yeah, various artists. You've got let's see, Cake did their cover of Mana Mana.
I know how it goes. I could sing it to you right now. That is so perfect for Cake.
Yep. But yeah, I think in that case, Being Green was covered by Andrew Bird.
Nice. Well, maybe I'll have to go listen to that, because I've been really impressed. Again, some of the covers and right now, do you want to talk about? I mean, obviously, this is going to change by the time we release the episode, but right now we're working on The First Time It Happens.
Oh gosh,
we were just working on this recently.
Right.
You want to talk about that song since it's very fresh for us right now?
Oh my gosh. Okay, so this is a song from The Great Muppet Caper, which many people think is the best Muppet movie of all time. It definitely holds a special place in my heart. But this cover is done by, of all people, Seth MacFarlane?
Yeah.
Who turns out has a great swing style voice.
Yeah.
He's very much
like
a Michael Bublé sound alike.
this up. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, so I, added that to my Muppets sing-along playlist and was like, oh, maybe I could practice that one of these days. And turns out it's real hard.
Yes. Well, again, yes, so many times you've brought songs, and this is a good example of like, and one thing we talk about in lessons is like, we want it to sound easy, right? So that's
Right.
the goal, right? So of course it's going to sound easy when they do it, but some of this stuff is pretty complicated. And again, they don't shy away from genre. They don't shy away from weird chord progressions or jumps that are pretty challenging for vocalists or weird range issues where like the first note of the whole thing is like pretty low and then it goes up pretty high. So
Yeah.
um
And I really love covers like this that brings something new to the table.
yeah.
Like if a cover is just, the original arrangement sung by, some celebrity, then like okay, that might, make some sales, but are they really how much
Yeah.
is it
How
contributing
much is it
to
they're making it their own? I think that's
Yeah.
why I know I keep bringing this up, but I'm going to go back there someday. They
Mhm.
really
Exactly.
made it their own. Nothing in that sounded even remotely Muppetish.
Yep.
But that's what I loved about it is they took it and they made it their own. And this one again, like this could be playing it like like you walk into the mall or something.
Mhm.
Like this could be on. You'd never know if you didn't already know that it's from the Muppets.
Yeah.
This particular version at least.
It
Um,
could absolutely be someone's like wedding song.
Totally. Absolutely. Yes. It would like hands down be played at the like beginning part of the wedding reception when all of the like, all of the generations are there.
Yep.
And they
In
play
fact, I
just
know
random music.
someone through Tough Pigs who this was their wedding song, but it was the Muppets version because I don't think this one had come out yet.
Right. Yes. Oh man, that's fun. Oh, that's fun. Any other crazy interesting times when you've encountered the Muppets that you didn't expect to? Like do you see them in interesting places? Maybe not. This is just a question that kind of popped into my head for no reason. Like for example, at a wedding, that's not a place I would necessarily expect to see a Muppet song.
Well, because, in particular, this was a couple of fellow Muppet nerds, that piece of information was not a surprise to me. Um, and, some day at my future wedding, there will probably be a Muppet song or 10.
I have zero doubt in that.
Right.
And it will be epic because again, yeah, there's just such depth and breadth here.
Mhm.
Well, I always ask this final question at the end of every interview. So, do you know what zeitgeist means?
I remember listening to the intro of your podcast and going, "Oh, yeah, that makes sense," and now I forget the literal
Yeah.
translation.
So it
Okay, so
means spirit of the times. So
yes.
zeit is time, and then geist is like ghost, like poltergeist, ghost.
Yeah.
Right, so time goes. But like the translation means like spirit of the time. It's like kind of what it like feels like to be in any particular moment. So like if you
Mhm.
picture living through 2020, there's a very specific zeitgeist that everyone was, versus like in the 90s, completely different zeitgeist. And so I have an anthropology background too. That was my real major in school.
Oh, that makes a
So
lot of sense now that I'm thinking
yeah.
about it.
So that's why I think this is such the I am enjoying so much this combination zeitgeist radio of like talking to people from these interesting subcultures or like places that people make music and show up and what is the zeitgeist. So there's a moment that I call a zeitgeist moment where
Mm,
you just kind of like there's a moment where you just plug in to whatever that zeitgeist is through music because this is a music focused podcast and business here that I have. Um so when kind of like when you feel alive through
mm.
music and connected to something bigger than yourself. So that's kind of what I call a zeitgeist moment. What was a recent zeitgeist moment for you?
Oh my gosh. So, as we're recording this podcast, the new series, The Muppets Mayhem, has not yet premiered, but they're going through a lot of, like, uh, teaser trailers and, dropping like one song at a time, and the album's available for pre-order. And we over at Tough Pigs have been cautiously optimistic for a long time, like, "Oh, the Electric Mayhem are getting their own show. This could go really awesome or really bad, and we don't know, and we're gonna cross our fingers because, Back to the Rock was incredible, and we never thought that would happen." And And, I haven't seen it yet. Like it hasn't dropped yet, but you know, I think a few of the press have gotten early press access to watch it, and they can't say anything yet except, "Hey, I think this is really good." And so that makes me really hopeful that there's a lot of talk about, like, are the Muppets still relevant? Should they retire? How long can they keep going? And this is making me hopeful that, we can still get new generations of fans and find ways to keep these characters relevant and reinventing them. Like, their original puppeteers, half of them are no longer with us, and so then these new folks have got to take on these legacy characters and make them their own, but still somehow stay true to the original. And these new writers coming on have got this job of continuing these legacy characters, but also with more, 2023 sensibilities. And I'm incredibly impressed and grateful when they get it right. I will say that there was a particular moment of the holiday special of Back to the Rock. Um, so Back to the Rock is not a sequel or a prequel to the original Fraggle Rock. It's an AU. It's an alternate universe, and each episode contains, redoing an original song or from the original series, and then one new original song. And when this holiday special came out, I was convinced that, the song that they brought back from the original series was going to be "There's a Promise," because it was the winter holiday special. What other song could it be? And what they did instead was they used the final song from the final episode of the original series, which was "Magic Be With You." And, the whole message was, you cannot leave the magic. Magic will always be with you. And I started crying. I was like at that point, we knew that they had gotten a season 2, but at that point they didn't. It was their, "Hey, if this is all we get, let's give it our all." And that just meant so much to me.
That's awesome. Oh my gosh. I love that. Well, I mean, like, if working through these with you has told me anything, it's that this music is absolutely still relevant. Like, these themes will never go away. It's part of being human.
Yep.
And even like some of the protest song. What year was that written? Like
80
yeah.
something, 3 or 4.
Yeah. And you brought it to me in like 2021, I guess, 2022.
Mhm.
Right in the middle. I mean, it's just very, very much still relevant. So,
Oh,
yeah.
yeah.
I appreciate you taking me on this journey. I'm not sure who's
Aw.
leading who here, but it's very fun for me. So, Beth, thank you so much for being on my podcast.
Thank you so much for having me. This was a blast.
Thanks for tuning in to this episode of Zeitgeist Radio. To uplevel your musical journey and become a music student for life, join the Zeitgeist Academy by signing up for my bi-weekly newsletter. You'll get exclusive content, blog posts, and behind-the-scenes insights. I love putting it together, and you'll love reading it. Head over to zeitgeistacademy.com/radio. That's ZEITGEIST academy.com/radio. Music for this episode was created by Ian Boswell. Please hit that subscribe button and tell all your friends you found a cool new podcast. See you next time.